Hey, you. Thanks so much for tuning into Applegate's EDGEcast powered by Exit Zero Communications. Today we want to turn on your thinking about ways to use events to add profit in your personal lives or your business. And we'll examine forensic deep dives and we'll explore behind the curtains to see what's truly behind the art and science of profitable event production. The fun part for me is I'll be able to be joined by my friends who I've met at events along the way. And the goal of the show is to interview cool, interesting, smart people who are experts in their field. And the hope is that for those who invest their time with Exit Zero moving forward, that you'll use what you've learned from me and my guests to create a better first or next event experience for you. Then when you are successful, we are successful, and that is a way for you to possibly jane it forward as well. So with that, we've got a great show today. But first, let me talk a little bit about a couple of rules that we have here for the show. It's super casual. The show is intended to be a conversation among friends. It's usually going to be somewhere around maybe 45 minutes. It kind of depends on the topic. Sometimes it might run longer, shorter, kind of just depends. We want it to be raw, meaning there'll be minimum editing. And so because we actually, though this is a podcast for listeners, we actually are recording this so that viewers can enjoy as well. Guests must agree to not take themselves too seriously. When you're talking about event planning, sometimes it can get really raw at times. And I know I get super emotional, both because it's stressful, it's exhausting, but it's also so exhilarating when you're standing in the back of the house and you're seeing your event that you've worked so hard on doing what it's supposed to do. Super exciting, super fun. And that's why I'm here doing it and wanting to teach about event planning moving forward. All the topics will be explored through my personal success story or lens. It's a process called Applegate's Edge, and we're about energizing your project, idea, process, whatever it might be, and then designing profitable strategies that will help you grow and elevate your business. So that's the sales stuff, okay? We don't like any of that, but that's part of what we have to do. Now getting on to the cool stuff. In the words of William Wordsworth, to begin. So today I'm excited to have a good friend here. She is part of my Friday cohort, if you will. Sheila Farragher-Gemma is founder of Connected Sponsors. And we meet regularly on Fridays now to help grow each other's business, to be there as support, and to be experts for each other when we're running into a problem with our business or with our client service, et cetera. But don't want to hear me talking anymore about me. Again, Sheila is the founder of Connected Sponsors. I know her as the sponsorship queen. I'm going to turn it over to you, Sheila, because what I want to know is what made you get into this very challenging piece of event production, and that is the sponsorship game.
Thanks, Jane. And first of all, thank you so much for having me on here. I'm really thrilled to be part of your podcast and Applegate's Edge. What's that?
I'm thrilled to have you. It's so fun.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's really cool to see this, coming to light, having talked about it so many Friday mornings about your plans and everything. And it's just, I'm just thrilled to be here. So thank you for that. But yeah, sponsorship. So basically in everything I've always done, I've always kind of been that strategic partnerships type person, finding ways to monetize a business. And how sponsorship kind of came around was I was doing it a little bit for my own events throughout the years, not as a career, just as it was kind of a part of what I was doing to help my own events. And one of the businesses I had just before I kind of started doing this full time was with a woman called Deanna Rogers. She got kind of literally recruited out of the business. We were at a mastermind meeting we were holding, and these guys from Digital Marketer showed up because they were doing a meeting across the road. And they were wooing her to get her to come and be their director of events, which she is, and she's been running their events now for probably about 10, maybe 15 years. I'm not sure how long. And when that happened, she asked me if I could come in and help her with a big event that they do every year called Traffic and Conversion. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years with her. But the thing about it is there's a lot of speakers who go to that event. And when they saw what I was doing, they started asking me if I could do that for them too. And, the business just kind of was formed really organically from that. It wasn't something I set out to kind of, I didn't draw up a business plan and make decisions to like do this. It just kind of happened on its own. So that's how I got here.
Right. That's sort of how I got into events.
Yeah.
I actually have a criminal justice degree, right, and nearly a psychology degree, and I'm a probation officer by training, and wanted to serve people through social service. And then when I couldn't get into the industry, ended up going into sales, and then got into video production, agency account, full service advertising agency account service work. And then here we are now all of a sudden doing events. But what we know as event producers, we can't do the events without somebody paying for it, right? So whether it's corporate America, who's, funding the big check, a Humana, a healthcare organization, a big industry, whatever. But so many organizations, associations, not-for-profits, they need help, right? They need sponsorship to help pay for their event. It is a very, very challenging thing that you do. So maybe if you could talk about different types of sponsorship. Sheila, I know that because when people hear sponsorship, usually they think about maybe like one bucket of money, right? But there's lots of different pockets of money or buckets of money to go to in corporate America. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's usually when I talk about types of sponsorship, I'm kind of talking about what the sponsor wants to get out of it. I really advocate for the sponsors, making sure that they get what they want. So a lot of times, most of the sponsors I work with are looking for an ROI. So they're at an event because they're looking to promote whatever it is that they do, their service or their product. And they're in front of the demographic that they need to be in front of to get that done. In terms of buckets of money, I know corporates have, they've different things. They've got kind of social justice and PR, public relations. They want to be seen to be aligned with different types of brands, which is one thing. But then they also, will have their thing as well, where they are looking to bring in more business. I think one of the big misconceptions about sponsorship is it's just this big company who's just going to give me money to do something, but they need to get their something out of it as well. And I think that's like a lot of times when I start working with a company or when I'm interviewing a company to see if I'm going to work with them or not, that's a big red flag for me. If they're just like, how much money can we get? It's like, how much are you going to give, So you really have to kind of make sure that it's a win-win for everyone and that we can, we're looking to build a sustainable relationship whereby when you come to them the next time looking for sponsorship or looking to have them be involved with your events, that it's just a no-brainer for them. They're like, yeah, we're in, whatever you need. So it's really building that relationship part of it that's the most important thing, in my opinion.
I totally agree. And you mentioned a phrase earlier, or an acronym, ROI. So for those listeners who aren't aware, that is return on investment. And that is what the prospective sponsor, we as the event producers, we hope that the sponsor is going to get their return on investment, right? Again, it's about the promise that we make as the event producers. We're going to deliver this event. We're going to expose your sponsor logo to this number of eyes, or we're going to put it on this signage, or we're going to offer you a spot on stage to introduce the keynote speaker, whatever the case may be. But yeah, that return on investment is so huge. And it's not always about money, is it? You talked about social justice and you were talking about, like, when I talked about different pots of money, there's marketing, there's economic development, there's different revenue streams within an industry or within large companies that can be dovetailed or earmarked for sponsorship for a particular issue.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe if you could talk a little bit more about what sponsors might be looking for as an outcome rather than, just eyes on message.
Yeah. So they may be, if they're having, sometimes some bigger sponsors, maybe they're internally, I guess the story or the perception of them out there is maybe not good. Maybe they don't have a lot of women executives, or maybe they don't have, a very diverse community, or lots of different things. So they want to get out in front of that. They want to align with who they want to become. So that they want their perception, because it's more than just, for a company, it's more than just, product and things like that as well. They're building a culture, they're building a workforce, they're building a corporation. So they're looking to whatever that is that they're looking for. You want to make sure that you're able to deliver that. So that's why it's so important, going back to the relationship part, is that when you meet with the sponsor, you really want to know, before you ever start to pitch them on anything, is what is their goals, what's in it for them, what are they looking to achieve out of this, why do they think your event will be good versus somebody else's, or all of that kind of stuff. The different buckets of money, I kind of leave that up to them. I guess that would probably be a good closing thing. Well, can you go to marketing and grab a few bucks from there? But I figured that's kind of more their deal than mine. But yeah, it's just the bottom line is that you really want to have a really good perception of them and what they are and what they're looking for, and then deliver that in spades to them.
Absolutely. And going back to that, like when we talk about the different buckets, you're absolutely right. Like, one of the things that I always felt bad about when doing an annual meeting is going to the sponsors once a year, right? I mean, you can't, that's just not good. That's not good to go to them. Hey, I'm back. Will you give, because then people are like, oh, we don't want to take Applegate's call because she only calls me when she wants something,
Yeah.
And there needs to be some reciprocity in the relationship, obviously. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I know that I have had the opportunity to work within large organizations like a utility as a sponsor. And so that first session was definitely a listening session. And then we would, I would hear, oh, well, we have this, this economic development arm, we have the marketing arm, we have the whatever, maybe it's something to do with their employees, like an employee fund for a giving fund or whatever. Each one of those has its own mission back, circling back to what you just talked about. And so again, as the event producer side, I'm always trying to be as open as I can to wherever that revenue stream might come from. And then the challenge is always, did I deliver? So like at the beginning, one of the challenges as an event producer, because I always end up writing my own sponsorship plans, right? And at the beginning, you're like, okay, the classics are, you're going to have, a typical not-for-profit smaller events, you're going to have the 1,000, 2,500, 5,000, 10,000 kind of ranges. And then it's like, okay, well, what do they get for those things, right? And so then you build your plan, and then you go out and you've done some listening, and now you're going out to do the pitch. Well, the challenge sometimes becomes, you've got this pitch in place, but they don't care anything about it. Like every time I've sold an event with tables, for example, you always get a corporate table. Well, in today's world, filling a corporate table takes more energy for the sponsor. They don't want corporate tables anymore a lot of times. So, the needs are changing. But again, it's just about listening to what they want and trying to deliver it in the best way that you can.
And it's funny you talk about corporate tables, because I actually really, I feel like on the sponsors part, that's kind of a cop out not to do that. So like with a little bit of education, I built a lot of education into sponsors I'm bringing into an event, so that they can really leverage they're there for 2 or 3 days, and it's make hay when the sun shines. It's one of my favorite sayings. I have another one that we probably couldn't say in the podcast because it has rude words in it. It's one of my favorite things is to kind of coach them on that. Like, I mean, you're not just going to come and sit behind this table and wait for people to come to you. Like, what else can you do? How can you integrate yourself into the event in a way that's allowed to really maximize it? Because once you get back on that plane and go home, it's over. It's like reaching out to those people is so much harder. It's like, I would say 10 to 100 times harder than actually being there in front of them and having conversations. So like really maximize all those hours of the event. But because there's like, you'll have big sponsors who are looking for impressions, like a Marriott or American Express. They want their logo there. They want the brand recognition. you know, Coca-Cola. But for a lot of businesses, they're not there. And, you know, they really need to be at that event and start creating those relationships, because their logo almost doesn't matter, you know, where it is doesn't matter. It's that they're there and they're meeting with the attendees and they're creating the relationships. That's what's really going to get them the best bang for their buck. So it kind of is, you know, they've a lot they need to put into it as well.
Right, right. And I like the fact that we're representing different sides of the aisle, so to speak. You know,
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
the one
Yeah.
asking, you know, needing the money, so to speak,
Yeah.
from the sponsors. You're the one looking for the best fit for the sponsor, for your clients and their investment. You know, and so it's kind of neat that we're having this conversation from different perspectives. I'm kind of enjoying
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
that. So, and you alluded to it, but speak a little bit more about ways that sponsors can take advantage of it. You know, you talked about being at the back of the, you know, the back of the room, at the table, whatever the case may be. Is it giveaways? Is it a sidebar outside of the event? I don't know. Have any thoughts there?
It's all of those. I mean, you want to be the most exciting thing in town. Like you want to be there where everyone's kind of talking about you. Oh, do you see those guys? So whether it's like, you know, wearing goofy shirts or having a uniform or having a booth that you've decorated with, you know, a theme, and maybe you're serving something that ties into that theme, but you want to be the talk of the event. If you want to maybe do something outside of the event, like you want to get involved with the event owners and see what they have going on, so that you're not doing it on the night when they're doing their you know, their special show or their prize giving or something like that. But do something cool that, like, by coming to the booth and having a conversation and giving your information, that you may get a ticket to this cool club or this cool dinner or this, you know, cool something. So you really want people to be a buzz about you. So there's a lot that goes into that, to the planning and the strategy of it. You know, it's more than just kind of showing up with one banner that flips up and sitting behind a table and with two chairs and doing that. You know, you really want to kind of be strategic about it and make sure that you can maximize every minute of it. Like I suggest to sponsors, like even simple things like go to the restaurant on your own during each of the meal breaks or whatever. Like if you've got, you know, say if you have a team of 4 or 5 on the booth, they should not go eat together ever. They should always go and sit down with somebody else and eat and network and, you know, hit the bars at the end of the day. It's a long day because you're there from like 6, 7 a.m. in the morning getting set up right through to whatever time it ends, you know, and then after. So just like really look at things that you can do that are outside of the box, because everyone's going to go and do the typical things. They're going to sit at their booth with their laptop open, working during, you know, in between sessions or on the phone or whatever. But it's like, you can just, even by rearranging the booth to something that's more friendly for people coming in, you can do so much more with it. So that's where I kind of spend a lot of time with my sponsors, just to make sure that they're really going to maximize what they're doing.
Right, right. And when you talk about booth, you know, I, in my mind, go to a trade show environment, but a booth is also, you know, where, you know, as Sheila mentioned, during breakouts at conferences, for example, there is going to be a track or parts of the days where the sponsors have access to the attendees, right? And so she's talking about the booth and their exposure at that piece of a larger event. And it's so important. I mean, even the smallest things of, you know, if you have a 10 by 10, so many people so many businesses put their table at the front of the booth, which is a physical blocker between you and your prospect. I mean, I could talk about this kind of the psychology of this stuff for like hours, but it is so important. And to have something quirky and unique is especially in today's world. I mean, you talk about, you know, you want everybody talking about you. Well, I've seen some really interesting plays where maybe people aren't even doing their pop-up banners anymore. They're literally putting in some lounge chairs and a charging station. So you can come get it, you know, take a quick breath and get away from the crowd and have your own little space or whatever. And then there's an, oh, by the way, message somewhere in the space. That has gone over very, very well. Now I'm seeing things like, you know, photo booths where you can get your photo taken. And
right. Yeah, those are a ton of fun.
Yeah. But, you know, they're fun, right? We both smile. We both think about, oh, yeah, I remember when. But it's also because then you can brand that item and then give it away. Or they, you know, attendee would take that branded item with them, and it's going to be on their desk for the next year, thinking about you potentially.
Yep.
What a great experience I had, or whatever the case may be. So yeah. Also, I think it's important for sponsors. I just talk about a branded item, but a logo is a logo, and you forget about that the minute you walk out the door. So again, giving something for the attendees. I mean, do you recommend that for sponsors to do that? I
absolutely, yeah. I recommend them giving something physical that is a reminder. Again, you want to go for something cool, but something that's useful that somebody will use. There's so many things, you can pretty much get something for everything. Like, did you know, this is a nice point of fact, that a pen, usually just a regular pen, usually has about 7 owners in its lifetime?
No, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, that's just a quick thing. But think outside the box, be different to everyone else who's there, and try and do something that's, again, bringing excitement, opening up conversations, so that you can really get to know the people who are at the event and make those relationships, at least the start of them.
Right. What about in terms of, like, on the event producer side, right? I'm looking at what value can I offer sponsors out, that's more of that sort of package,
Yeah.
So everybody has the equal size logo. You only get on the website if you're at 10,000 plus. Do you have any insights? And I'm kind of probably catching you off guard with this question, but do you have any insights for maybe levels of giving, or things that we event producers should consider when we're building out our sponsorship plans, in terms of, again, what the
sponsor? So I think it all comes down to, the type of event it is and what the sponsors are looking to achieve. So if you have that relationship with them in advance, a lot of times when I get an event for the first time, I'm already curating in my mind. I'm like, okay, this is going to be really good for X, Y, and Z. Yes. And as I'm building out the deck, I'm almost building it for the people that I think are probably going to go for the higher level things, because, one of them likes to do this, one of them likes to have this in the offering. So, just kind of, you're always kind of starting kind of at the end and working your way back, if that makes sense. So the end is, your ideal sponsor hall. So when I think of it, I think of, that there's whatever's happening in the ballroom is, the people coming there are looking for some sort of transformation, whether it be, to learn more in business, to learn how to invest in real estate, to learn how to have a happier marriage, whatever it is, that's what they're there for. And if you, as the event host, or the event planner, can, in addition to what's being taught in this ballroom, can have the resources for these people outside of the ballroom, it just makes this like amazing kind of synergy between, the attendees are not only getting education, but they're getting resources. The sponsors are getting in front of their ideal attendees, because they are the people that are needed by these attendees. And then the host is kind of, he's putting on this great event for attendees, but he's also getting paid, so it's going to help with some of those crazy, fees that they have to pay to put on an event. Putting on an event is very expensive. So if you kind of curate the whole thing, rather than just kind of looking for a sponsor who's going to, ink a check, you want to make sure that it's the right setup of sponsors. You want to make sure, if it's a smaller event, that you only have like kind of one per category. You don't want to have, 4 merchant processors, fighting for the attention of 50 or 100 people. So, it's just like really putting that thought into it. There's a lot into it. There's a lot of strategy that goes into it. And again, once you get it right, the event is, at the end of the event, people are just going to be like, yeah, let me know about next year when you know when it is. This is great for us. So you just want everyone to win.
Right. And you talked about, okay, so vertical exclusivity, if you will, is kind of what I talk about.
Yeah.
And again, so making sure that your sponsor's message isn't watered out because you've watered down because you sold 2 sponsors in the same category. It just doesn't make any sense for them or for you necessarily. Also, I would like to remind people that when they're, working with sponsors and they're creating their event, to make sure that if you've promised your sponsors time or potential time with your attendees, that happens, and that you don't create your event or design your event to take those attendees away from the sponsors that you made that commitment to, because I've seen that happen before. I've done it before, where I maybe like created a speaker track, that could go throughout the event, and I wanted people sitting in those seats listening to the speakers. But then that took them away from maybe being at the sponsorship booth where there's one-on-one with the sponsor. So, oh gosh, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, it really is a balancing act. Like one of the things you'll see a lot of people do, and I do myself, I'm sure you do it yourself as well, is like any opportunity you have to have meals or a rolling bar or whatever, have that happen in the sponsor area. So people are being drawn in anyway into that area. So like coffee is always served out where the sponsors are, and the morning snack and the afternoon snack. And a lot of times we'll have a sponsor actually sponsor a rolling bar though. So they roll in a bar and people have drink tickets and they can have a drink or two while they're networking, but they're also right in the sponsor area. So it's just like, you really want to curate it to that. Like the big mistake I see a lot of event owners do is they have an event in November and they get a check from a sponsor in January, and then they proceed to forget about them. And it's like, well, that's not the way it works, So you want to make sure that they're getting everything that they need. And also, like throughout the show, I've had instances as well where, like, even with the best planning, someone can end up maybe in not like a great area, or they're not getting the traffic or whatever. I mean, you need to be on that like immediately and either get them moved, or if it's not easy to get them moved, do something like, hire a popcorn machine and put it at their booth so that now the smell is drawing people down that way, or whatever it is. But you need to make sure that you're really, really on top of it throughout and looking after them, because they want to walk away from that feeling like, I was really well cared for. And even if some things went wrong, I know that they were like, they were looking out for me, and that makes a whole bunch of difference than the other.
Absolutely. One of the things that I always do is, at least the larger sponsors, and again, it could be cash or in kind or whatever, but I do a post-event follow-up. Did you attend? Did your people attend? What did you like? What could we have done better? The what I call kind of the good, bad, and ugly of an event with individual sponsors, and of course with your team. What did we learn about, or what did we see, or what did we what feedback did we get from the sponsors on site, or if any, that kind of thing. So with today's world, we have this thing called virtual meetings, right?
What's that?
And so we've been talking a lot about sort of the more traditional type of events where, attendees come to a venue. What about, what have you learned about sponsorship in the virtual event space? And I know that that's like a super wide, that's a big net right there of a question. Any thoughts there?
Well, the one thing is that it works. I remember being in many, many meetings kind of in February and March of 2020, and just like people panicking, like as events were getting cancelled one after the other with COVID. So it does work. For some sponsors, I think it works even better, because we're kind of, and there's a lot of ways you can organize your event to do it, but the more you can get the people in front of the sponsors, a lot of times I've seen kind of almost like a workshop kind of thing happen in the sponsor booth, which is now the sponsor Zoom room, basically, where they can go in, they can learn something, they can walk away with something they've achieved, they can create, a list of something, or they can create the starting of whatever it is that they're trying to do. So there's really a lot of ways to be creative and show value, because, sponsors as well need to show value to the potential client if they're going to get hired, so they can really kind of showcase themselves in a way that's helpful to the attendee. And there really is a lot of opportunity there as well to kind of think outside the box and be strategic.
Right. And interesting, so many people are like, I'm so burned out with virtual, but then you start talking about the benefits of virtual, like you don't have to travel, you can look however you want from the waist down, all those kinds of things. There's just so many benefits to virtual, in my opinion. I mean, obviously you don't get to go have a drink in the back of the room, which is always fun. The best part of any conference for me is catching up with people and the networking and the dinners and the, the elbow to elbow learning, that kind of stuff. And you don't necessarily get that so much with virtual. But another piece that I really like about it is, if you have the right structure in play, then you can do what's called gaming, or it's point earnings, if you will, for your attendees. And it's all about engagement, right? And keeping them engaged with the event itself, with the sponsors, with whatever the message is. And so you can, encourage guests or attendees to go to every sponsor booth. Now, in some cases, that's kind of like going and picking up the tchotchke at every booth, and there's no relationship, right?
Yeah.
But in theory, that's not the kind of sponsors that we're going to have at our events. They're going to be more invested in the content and the mission of the event and the attendees, whatever the case may be. But I know that even the virtual event on virtual events, there were so many speakers over the course of the 3 days, and now we have opportunity to learn from all of those individuals. And that's really, I think that's really cool that I don't know that I would have have been as educated about or had all their contact information in my inbox. So it makes it really easy if you want to learn more about, a deep dive on this particular topic or whatever that you were exposed to by a sponsor at an event. Now, we've touched a little bit on this, but, I've talked about sponsorship isn't always just about money, right? It could be in kind. So in kind is they're providing you with a service or a product, and there's not necessarily cash involved. So one of the in kinds that I will always work for is anything print or signage related, because those are hard costs that you have to have at an event. But if you can get a good partner, then they are going to sign you up, so to speak. And that's worked very, very well for me. I know in one event, our actual hard costs were $18,000. But when we figured out all of the in-kind, whether it be, again, signage or print production, like a printer is super great to have on your on your in-kind team, media, et cetera. The event was like at $185,000 is what it was valued at, but it cost $18,000. I was like, I guess I'm pretty good at in-kind, Yeah. So, and then I don't know, Sheila, I'm not sure if you do a lot with the media and sponsorship opportunities, or do you leverage the media in any way for your sponsors? Or do you do it to your clients as a lot of folks do?
Yeah, so I really don't leverage a lot of them. Like if the client is doing any kind of press releases, social media, things like that, they will talk about the sponsors coming as well, because they're delivering a whole package. So they're delivering education and resources. So as any opportunity we get to do something like that, we'll definitely get them out there. But it's not specifically something I do or promise, because a lot of times the media is especially like hardcore media, like radio, TV, newspaper, stuff like that. There's no guarantee that they come out and interview you and it either doesn't come on or it's like a 5-second blip, or, so there's I always like to have a couple of things built in that weren't advertised. Exactly. And then they get them and they're kind of like, oh, wow, this is like way more than I expected. So
that's exactly where I was going. Thank you. Because I like to over deliver, under promise, over deliver, for sure. And so, there's nothing better than when I've done a press interview and then I do that follow-up call after the event, and they have heard their business name mentioned when they didn't pay for that. That is the most valuable thing you can provide a sponsor, is exposure that they didn't pay for, right? And they will love you for that. And so this is cool stuff. So what about what's happening with connected sponsors now, Sheila? For years you have been contracted by your clients to raise funds. Is that something that you still envision doing as you move forward? Because I know a lot of us are pivoting in this time with change of COVID, and we're wanting to pursue more about the things we love, rather than the things that we have to do because that's what we do for a living, right? So can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I'm definitely scaling up a little bit on that. There's pieces of the process that I love that I will continue to always do. And then there's pieces of the process that I'm definitely beginning to hire a team for and outsource, which I think is going to be the same in anyone's business. It's not just in sponsorship, that you figure out what it is that you like to do and what you're good at. There's pieces of the process I should never do because it's not my thing. And then you know, where my heart is as well as with like, I mean, I have so many sponsors that I have great relationships with that I just want to create a community for them as well, because they can really learn from each other. And, you know, I feel like you know, like part of the vision is to kind of go to an event promoter and just be like, okay, I have this stable of sponsors that want to come in. So let's negotiate something special for all of them, because we're bringing them in as a group. So all of a sudden they go from 0 sponsors to like 10. And, you know, so I've all kind of these ideas in my mind of ways I want to do it. And then the third thing is sponsor education, because nothing drives me insane more than if someone spends a lot of money in sponsorship and sends a couple of people to be at the table or the booth or wherever they are in the event, and I walk by and one's asleep and one's like eating a sub and engrossed in his computer or whatever, you know. It's just and you know, the owners call me up and they're like, you know, we're not getting many leads, I don't know. And I'll send a picture and I'm like, this is what's going on over there. So, you know, just like it's such a huge opportunity, and I think it's like really underutilized most of the time. And I know it's hard, it's long days, it's a lot of, you have to be on all the time, you have to be really driven to go after those sales. So I know it's hard, but it's like, it's 2, 3, 4 days, that's it, you know. Let's just kind of get the nose to the grindstone, do it, and then take a vacation afterwards or whatever. It's
Absolutely.
usually
It's
fine.
building that pipeline for the year of work ahead,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I know that, okay, so I do lots of different kinds of things just because I think they're fun. And so I was hired by a company to be a booth babe, right?
Yeah.
And it was I don't know, a 3-day show or whatever. And it was the Home and Garden Show, which was my first client 20 years ago, right? So this is why I
Right.
did it, because I knew I would be in a booth and I would see hundreds of my friends. That's why I did it.
Yeah.
Whether they were other booth people or just, you know, community members. And anyway, so I got there the day of the event, and these were like, they were long out. I mean, they were, you know, it's a community event and it's a garden show. So they want to be open as many hours as possible. So I think Saturday was somewhere around 11 or 12 hours the event was open. Well, when I got to the event, someone came and trained me and then said, okay, well, let me know if you need anything. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, I got to leave now. And I go, you're not going to be with me? And they said, no. They didn't even have a company representative there, or even, I didn't even know their product. So now I'm the
Wow.
booth babe for 3 days representing their company, and I don't know anything about the company. So I have to go online and teach myself what to say about this company. And I cranked it. They had so many leads from that event that they then hired someone. So there was a death in my family and I had to leave. And then I coached somebody to take my place. And then between he and I, they wanted to hire us the next year to do the event, but we couldn't, we were too busy.
Wow.
But
That's
anyway,
great.
I was like, I'm going to be here 3 days by myself in this booth, and I don't know anything about your product. And that's just physically not human to be in a booth for 12 hours on your feet with no potty breaks, no, because you don't abandon your booth, you don't eat in your booth, you know,
Yeah.
like you said, you don't sleep in your booth, and you shouldn't be working on your computer in your booth. You should be interacting with the people who've been brought to you.
Yeah.
God, I'm with you. That kind of
That's
stuff.
crazy. I don't know why a company would do that. Like, it's just like sometimes the things people do, it just like it blows my mind. And like, you know, I'll always kind of step in and be like, what are we doing here?
Well, it was a
You
small
thinking this
company and
through?
they didn't really, you know, they don't know the ins and outs. They totally could have used your training 100%, you know. But I've
Yeah.
worked so many trade shows. It just is just absolutely natural to me, you know, but that's not an easy thing for a lot of people to do, actually.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, so um yeah, so you know, we've talked about in kind, we've talked about leveraging the media, we've talked about, you know, listening to our sponsors. We've talked a little bit about the virtual world versus in person. Sheila, is there anything that in the sponsorship world that you know, high level view that maybe I haven't asked that you would like to speak to? And again, kind of an unfair question because I didn't prep you for
Yeah.
that.
I don't think they're like, I mean, it's sponsorship is just another piece of your marketing. It's like your email marketing, it's like your social media. It's another thing that you're doing to bring leads into your business, to bring business into your business. So just be and it can be a more expensive one depending on where you're going, because you know, sponsorship isn't cheap usually. So just be strategic about it, you know, decide where you're going to go, make sure that it makes sense, have somebody who's or some buddies, you don't want to just send one, people that are really trained to convert leads on the fly like that, because they're here, the attendees may not get the connection immediately. They're here to learn something. They get out to go on a break and they're running to go to the bathroom, they want to grab a coffee, and they've like 3 phone calls they have to return. So they may not be like, so how do you track them? How do you like stop that and get them to pay attention to you? So just like be very strategic about what it is that you're doing, so that you can really leverage the entire experience, because you want to get the most out of it, and it's a very short duration. So if you're not in it at the time, it's not going to happen afterwards.
Right. Thank you for that. And one thing I wanted to share is one of my clients, how I came to him. I had gotten just a random email about Maker Faire 6. So this was an event I did a number of years ago, and basically it was an email that said, "We are interested in hyperlocal sponsorship support." And I thought, well, that's kind of an interesting message. And we weren't doing Maker Faire 6. So I contacted and I was kind of trying to figure out where I was going next professionally. So I reached out to him and I said, I kind of like your model here. What, do you guys need anybody? And she said, well, no, not, you would have to move to Carolina. But, my client, my boss, the guy that owns the company, is actually based out of Louisville, Kentucky, which is actually where I was moving. So anyway, the short version is that their website called zipsprout.com. It is a way to match big corporate sponsors who are looking to establish a footprint in a particular local market. It's a way to connect those opportunities. So it could be a Boy Scout event. It could be a major association event. It could be a major company rollout. But anyway, at zipsprout.com, I would encourage folks to check it out if you're looking for it. It's not big dollars. It's certainly entry level, and you do have to prove yourself. There's, an application process, et cetera, and then they will match you with potential sponsors for that particular event, probably a one-time only. But I know that when I was running that event, for example, it was very difficult. And if any dollar that someone would say, hey, would you be interested in taking this? If I could get something for this dollar, I would say, oh my gosh, let me clear my calendar and have a meeting. So anyway, again, I would suggest that people check out zipsprout.com, because it might get you $1,000 to your event, which is a completely kind of different game than Sheila's at, by the way. She works in the tens of thousands of dollars of sponsorship. And I've been doing sponsorship for literally 35 years, and I'm intimidated by her numbers that she's getting. So partly why I call her the sponsorship queen, and partly why I wanted to hear her have her on the show, because she is a true expert in that field. And as I said, I want to have the experts here, and hopefully you can learn from them.
So I think we've just found your first sponsor. Zipsprout.com. Send them their first ad, see what they think.
I'm working on it. So I think that's it for me today, but we definitely do want feedback on the show. The current episodes are available at businesseventpro.com on my website. And then older versions will be available at Applegate's Edge on YouTube. So please go subscribe, because that will, get us excited about continuing to provide new content for you on the channel. So we're excited about that. And the whole point of this show is to share what we've learned, with the hope that folks will build confidence, and they'll have the tools and the strategies for creating their own first or next event success stories, right? And whether it is in working with Exit Zero in the past, I have done everything, I've created events from soup to nuts. I consult with clients to make their events better. And in the future, the podcast and other products that are rolling out soon, it'll be about, educating you to be more successful at your own events. And so, maybe Exit Zero isn't for you, and that's okay, no worries. But I know that at least one person that having tools and techniques and strategies for producing a better events will help them. Guaranteed, you know, at least one person that you could share this information with, because we want to make our clients successful, and then we become successful, and then that's how you can jane it forward. So again, that's it for me today. We'll be back next week. My schedule is a little off right now with the podcast deliverable because of some training I'm in the process of. It's so exciting, and I'll get to share that here in the next few weeks. But again, check out abusinesseventpro.com to learn more about Exit Zero and how we can share Applegate's Edge. And please check us out on YouTube at Applegate's Edge and subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Sheila, thank you so much for joining us today.
So much,
I always learn so much from you, and we'll continue to do so. And guests, by the way, I am working hard on Sheila working with me in some sort of partnership, and I can't get her to do it because she's too darn busy, but we're going to keep working on it. So thank you again for joining us. I so appreciate it. Guest, we'd love having you. Check us out next week. Thank you for joining us. But until next time, just remember, strategic intention matters. Ciao for now. Thanks.